Hello, in this video we are going to be setting up WordPress. We're going to set up WordPress on your local machine under WAMP as described in the previous video so that you can customize everything, you can set up your theme, all of your files, everything but your content will basically be managed this way. I believe this is good practice. You don't have to use Git. I suggest it highly. It's very good practice. It keeps everything organized along with the ability to roll back, to undo changes, to figure out where problems are. Very useful that way. You don't have to, but this is how I do it and this is what I'm showing you. So to get started, we will be downloading a copy of WordPress. I've already done a few of those things. So let's begin by going into our WAMP server and changing the password for MySQL. So we're going to open up the MySQL console. Currently, the way WAMP is set up, there is no password. You could continue that way. I'm not going to. So all that we have to do is type update mysql.user set password equals function password. We'll type in, how about just password, because I'm not going to show you what I use in the future. And we'll hit enter. Then where user equals root semicolon to finish the statement. Flush privileges will just refresh MySQL as far as what's going on, what usernames, things like that. And we're good. So that part's done. Our SQL username is root, our SQL password is password. So when we set up WordPress, we'll enter those things. So next step though, because we're going to use a Git repo, you could do it publicly, or you could pay GitHub, do it privately. Another alternative that I use for my private buckets is Bitbucket. So what we're going to do is create a repo here. We're going to name it my blog, let's say, because it's WordPress. It's private. We're going to use Git. We're not going to have anybody else working on this private. If you were a small company, let's say, you could have issue tracking. I do have some alternatives for that. I'll explain that in a future video. But for now, we'll just set it up as is. Oh, you know what? We can we'll give it a language. It's going to be PHP. Overview. Okay, so in the Get Starting area, we're going to be starting from scratch. These are the command lines for Git. If you were to do it by command line, I've explained earlier that I love a program called SourceTree. It's phenomenal. This is the URL that you'll need to pay attention to. So we're going to copy that. We're going to open up SourceTree, and we're going to create a new Git repo or a new repository on our machine by cloning the one that we just made. So we're going to paste the URL here. Now, if you had already started a blog or any other type of thing that you want to use Git for, what you can do is just move that into a different directory on your machine. Set the destination path here. We're going to go to our C drive, our dev folder, and we'll do a new folder called my blog, and we're going to put it in here. If you were to do one from an old source, you would just rename my blog to my blog 2 or something. Create your new my blog directory because it needs to be empty, and then copy all your files into it after this. So we're going to clone that. It's going to pull the source that exists over at the what is this called, the Bitbucket repository, which is nothing. So we're done with that. We copy the source in. So we're going to go to our dev folder, our my blog folder. You can see the Git has begun, and grab the WordPress source. Simply copy all of this in. Okay, now if we go to localhost, we see my blog, and we're going to create the configuration file. Let's see. Well, we know these two things. We know password, database is localhost. If you have multiple databases under the same name, you can prefix them like something like that. We'll just use WordPress because we'll give it its own database, and we'll go to back to localhost. We'll go to phpMyAdmin. It's root and password. Well, not now for that. And let's create a new database. We'll do my blog. So we'll put my blog in here. This is the same as this guy here, and we'll set it up. Username, we'll do admin. I didn't realize you could choose this. Admin had always been the default username, which obviously gets targeted a lot. So why don't we choose Mike G? And obviously you could probably guess what I just typed in there. For future reference, choosing passwords, grc.com/passwords.html. Excellent source for choosing completely random passwords. It's excellent. So we're set up. Here's WordPress. Now we're going to set up our NetBeans project. So we'll hit New Project. It's going to be PHP, and it's going to be with existing source. We'll hit Next. Our source. My blog. Project name, that's fine. This is fine. Actually, I'm sorry. While editing this video, I realized I just told you that it was fine to put the project details into the same directory. You can do that by all means. NetBeans allows you to by default. I prefer not to. I like to have my NetBeans projects folder. You can put it wherever you want. Where it chooses by default is great. And then you have all of your project details in that folder. So when you go to open a project, everything's right there. Makes it a lot easier when opening things, and it keeps all of that data out of your actual directory that you're going to be deploying. So that way you don't have to think about it later. Sorry I made that mistake. Thanks. Hit next. This is correct. It's running on our local machine. This is for development purposes, for the project, for debugging and such. now have our project set up. It knows index is your main file. Open that one at first, not too important though. We have all of our content here, all of our files. What we're going to do though is we don't need this guy anymore. And we're going to copy this one and paste it here. This is just a thing that I like to do. We're going to rename this so when you move it from server to server, let's say you have a development server, being that it's your local machine, then you might have a beta server if you're doing work for a client. Then you might have your production server. So you can have one bconfig one for dev, then one -dev for this machine, your beta machine. That way you can have your database configurations and such there, and then your production. And then you'll just replace your config file as you deploy to different machines. This is also the way I set things up based upon the idea that the people who have access to these files are trustworthy. If you're the only one, or if you and the guy that's sitting next to you are the only one, you kind of know what's going on. If this was a larger environment, these files would be totally hidden from anybody else who is doing development work for you. Then why don't we grab a copy of the database. As you can see, we are going to take another look at this. Here's our database. We're going to export this. Export my blog, SQL, that's good. My blog.sql. We're going to put that, a copy of that in here. Cut that out of here, and we are going to put that in here. We're going to rename it DB database 1-DV. This way, when we hit the Git repository, it will have a copy of the database as well, and it will periodically, as we make backups, those backups will be reflected in the Git repository. So the next step is to go back to our source tree. It sees that all these files have been added or changed, and we're going to add them all except for, let's look at this differently. I'm sorry, I haven't used, this is a new version, I haven't used this one yet. We want, might be at the bottom. Yeah. Includes, here it is, wp config. We are going to ignore changes to this file because it could change back and forth depending on deployment, such things like that. Ignore exact file name. Okay. Boom, we're good. We're going to select all this, add it to our staging. We're then going to commit it. Initial commit, nothing real important here. Now, as of now, on your local machine, everything is told that, hey, this is what's going on with the Git repository. Thing is, though, it's only on your local machine. So now we're going to push it to our master branch and hit OK. And everything's being uploaded to the bit bucket. Okay, that's it. So now we'll double check over at Bitbucket, UMyBlog. And this is when we created it a couple minutes ago. We've pushed the initial changes and it's good to go. We can see the source. Everything's reflected here. So now when we make any changes, they'll be reflected as changes. NetBeans will update. All this is green is new. It will update in a second that that information has been committed. So the next step, why don't we get a plugin? Now, a plugin, it could be a plugin, it could be a theme, it could be any type of change we're making. But we're going to stage it on our machine first before we deploy it anywhere. We're going to customize it. We're going to do whatever we want. So we're going to grab a copy of Advanced Custom Fields. This is an excellent plugin for WordPress, especially for advanced development, creating custom theme types and then attaching information that's important to those posts or pages, however you're setting things up. So I've already gotten a copy of that. We'll go to Advanced Custom Fields and we'll add that to our plugin directory. And we'll drag that over here. It is important though, in general, that you don't go plugin and theme crazy. If you're using it, then you're using it. You have a need for it. But don't just leave a whole bunch of plugins on your machine or actually on your production environment installed or not installed. Just don't have those files there if you're not using them. If there is a weakness in one of them, especially if it's not active, you might not be updating it, and then you're being exposed to whatever that weakness is. So we've added that here. What we can do, we'll invoke it over here. Go to plugins. Here it is now. We'll activate this just so that we also make a change to the database. We'll pretend like we did a whole bunch of work just now. And we'll go back to our database. We'll export another. We'll go back to our dev folder. And grab this guy. We'll replace this one here with this guy. In other circumstances, if you've consistently made backups of your database, you might name it something different, such as the date. What are we on? And it is 1737. You might name it something like that so that you have one version after another after another. This isn't necessary with Git repositories because it is going to save those changes instead of all new information and only the changes. So a lot more efficient. You can by all means still do your databases that way somewhere else, but you don't need to do that with Git. So we have our database. Our file changes have already been reflected, which we can see. Well, we sort of can see in here. We have a change here. So what we're going to do is go back to source tree. As you can see, all of these changes are in that plugin folder, new files, except for this guy, which actually has content changes. And you can see them here. It's only going to save the actual information that was changed or added. And we're going to stage all of these. We'll commit these as a useful change. Installing commit. We're done. If we were going to do other things, maybe install another plugin, maybe install another theme, we could do that, make another commit. We don't have to do a whole bunch of work all at once, but we could push it all at once. So we have one commit that hasn't been pushed. We'll push that. And now you'll notice, granted this would have happened without the Git. I'm sorry, we don't want to go there. Custom fields. We have custom fields installed here. We can go back to the bit bucket and see that we've pushed new changes that include the advanced custom fields, and then here we have the latest file. We have those changes that were made, and if we needed to grab an old version, we could. So that's the basics on how I set up a new project. You can make whatever changes you need to. You could use whatever repositories. You could do it locally as far as having your own Git repository, be it on your machine or be it on a server that you set up. You don't actually have to use a remote repository to have all these benefits with something like SourceTree or doing it by command line. But doing it this way, if your machine were to be wiped out, you have a backup of everything remotely. So I hope you enjoyed this video. If you have any questions, let me know. Thank you.